Much. All right, so we are starting a new topic today. So Julie, nice you came. You were able to make it. You said, yes, I am doing this. Guarding your mind and your eyes. So does anyone already work on this idea of guarding yourself when there's so much out there in the world? Julie is saying, yes, yes, I do. How do you do it, Julie?
I pay attention to what I'm watching on the television when I watch. I really don't listen to a lot of music unless it has very uplifting words. I listen to a lot more instrumental stuff. Believe it or not, I don't like when I go past billboards, I try not to look at billboards. There's just so much negative stuff out there.
Oh,
And
yeah,
so I
there
just
is.
try really hard
There
to
is.
not to just I just don't look. Commercials, if we do watch TV, we record everything so I can just fast forward through the commercials and I don't have to watch them.
Wow. So you fast forward the commercials, you try to avoid the billboards, you try to listen to instrumental music.
I do. There's a lot. I mean, I listen to I go to church, so I listen to a lot of praise and worship music to get my focus on God, and I do that. But I really don't like, because I'm a substitute teacher and the kids are like, can you play this song? Can you like when they have free time, I'm like, no, can't, sorry. I don't know it. I haven't heard it. What do you mean you haven't heard it? Yeah, I don't listen to that music, guys.
Right.
And I never know
what planet are you on? So why do you do that, Julie? Why do you feel that's so important?
Because it just affects your spirit. I mean, that's how I feel. It's just it's like a lot of negative in, then that's what wants to come out. So to keep that out, I try not to put it in.
Get it. Wow. Anyone else? That was beautiful. Christelle or Danielle or Jenny, any of you are working on this already? Julie's for sure way into it. I see doing amazing
very
work.
similar. Yeah, very similar here. Tried to remove as much of it as possible in the home and outside of the home. With the same reason as Julie, right? It's can definitely affect you. So it's best not to consume any of that.
So what are the areas, Danielle, that you're focusing on? So Julie spoke about TV, commercials specifically, billboards, music with words. What do you focus on?
Yeah, I mean, we don't watch TV. We don't have any sort of connection to TV. We have a TV, but it doesn't connect to anything outside of, like, you can stream something on your phone to it. So there's no commercials, there's no anything like that. I wouldn't be able to tell you any commercial or anything. That's
Great. You don't have a TV. All right, beautiful. You're even a step ahead. You do not I know we've discussed this over the years. I know you struggle with it.
So I'm glad
you came to the point of saying
we
you
have
don't have a TV.
Physical one. We have
a physical one, but it doesn't work. It's not connected to any channels.
Right, exactly. Right. And then I would say the hardest thing, so when it comes to radio, I don't listen to a lot of music outside of, like, kids music, and we're really selective about that. Like, we have a Google Home device and you tell it what to play. So you tell it a specific thing to play and then it plays that song for you. And so it's not like a radio. We don't listen to radio stations or anything like that. I would say the thing that I'm still working on and definitely have some areas of improvement is social media, which I think I'm definitely working towards, but like the whole feed scenario, right? Like, it's hard to manage what does and doesn't display on your feed. So it's almost like watching TV and getting commercials, right? So it's going to be on there and you have to be able to filter that. So I would say that's my current challenge.
So the TV you overcame and you conquered, and the radio does not exist. So the music is just what you're selecting, children's songs, appropriate ones. And in social media, there are pop-ups and things like that are still around.
Yeah, or like people that I'm went to high school with or friends with or what have you
Yeah.
that maybe post things that I don't want to use the term bad, but certainly don't align with my morals and values.
I got off social media a few months ago, and it's been the best thing ever.
Yeah.
It just has. And people will say stuff and they're like, didn't you see it on? I'm like, nope, sorry, I don't do that anymore.
Great.
It's so time consuming.
Yes. Yes. We were discussing last week, time management. Social media definitely takes time, and and as Danielle says, it's not only time, it might also be, like you're saying, negativity in, negativity out. So that's really great. And Danielle, you do it for the same reason that Julie said? You also feel that?
Oh, yes, definitely. Completely. Yep. Also, I don't want my children to see that or hear those things, obviously. I know it affects me or would affect me, but of course, children are even more impersonable. So I don't want them to see that or hear that as well, of course.
Right. Right. Absolutely. No, children, when they're young, you're absolutely right. The impression is even stronger, like the young roots, even stronger. And that's why we definitely want to make sure, but we wouldn't want to expose ourselves to, how much more so we wouldn't expose our children. Wow, that's amazing. Both of you are really, really there. And I know Danielle struggled with the TV issue, because I remember discussing it over the years. It's come up. So I'm really impressed how far you've come. Christelle, Jenny, either of you are working on this?
Well, I homeschool, so that's one thing that we do to try to guard our son's eyes. To try to, we basically monitor and everything that he has access to for the most part. But what I find that is not under my control though is other children. We just had an incident in our neighborhood, and Eli has no concept of inappropriate words. And we had to go over a list of words so that he would understand what they were, so that he could, if he heard them, he would know to he would understand that they were not good, and that, he would need to come home if he heard them, type of a thing. So it's really interesting. It's we can shut down TV and social media and but it's just then there's other
There's people.
yeah, there's people. Yeah. Yeah,
Right.
that's the hardest one, because I was kind of floored. I didn't think we were there yet. I didn't think that it was going to be, I never even thought about having that conversation until we kind of found ourselves kind of needing to have it.
How old is your son now?
9.
Wow, he's young.
Yeah.
He's young. Yeah, you would assume other 9-year-old children, but you never know. And in our world, yeah, Julie's saying, no way, 9 is definitely old enough, and the children, unfortunately, are exposed to probably everything their parents are exposed to. And especially they're exposed to their parents. And like you're saying, whatever else goes on in the world, and in schools or in their whatever, virtually they're exposed to. So it's yeah, it's weird, saying these are the list of words and I'm telling you that you don't want to hear, and if you hear them, that means you're done and come home. And hopefully I guess you could say that to him because he's a child that's going to do that.
Oh, sorry, Sarah, I was on mute.
I said, I guess you could say that to him because he's a child that's going to do that.
I feel like he will. He's very, we kind of started the guarding your eyes thing with him from the moment he had that concept. And so, for the most part, when he was little, he would cover his eyes if something, he felt was inappropriate. And so it's been really good so far, but we just, we try to talk to him about everything and make sure that we're a safe place for him, so that, but yeah, it's getting tricky now, because it's we can't necessarily make children in the neighborhood forbidden,
Right.
because we're just going to have to learn how to deal with certain things. But man, just trying to equip such a young child with the boundaries and the guarding your eyes is difficult. So I'm excited for this class, because I'm sure you'll give me more insight.
Well, maybe, I don't know. Here I'm hearing from Julie and Danielle and you guys are so ahead in this. Maybe I think everything I'm going to say is going to be redundant, but it is interesting that you're homeschooling and Danielle's homeschooling and Julie is now also homeschooling. So yeah, there is a lot out there in the world that's obviously you can't protect your child and keep them in a bubble for life. And we wouldn't want to, and that's not what God wants. God wants you to be in the world. You know, when the Jews were in the desert, they were in a bubble. They were in a bubble for 40 years, and it was an amazing bubble. It was the most spiritual 40 years, you know, people have ever experienced. You know, they got their food from heaven and their water from heaven, you know, from a rock, and they were traveling on the clouds, and their feet didn't swell, and they didn't need new shoes, and they didn't need to launder their clothes, and they didn't need to iron. What did they do all day? They studied God's word. They studied Torah for 40 years. And that's why when the spies went to sojourn the land and they came back and said, no, you don't want to go there. And the question is, what are we talking about? This is God's land. And the spies were great people. They weren't bad people. Moses hand selected them. He didn't select, you know, losers. He selected great people. And one of the explanations is that from the inner dimension of Torah, the explanation is that they understood that if the Jews went there, they'd become peasants, farmers, you know, a nation of people that work the ground. And they're like, whoa, no, we don't want to lose this. Here we are living in the clouds, where we're a nation that just studies God day and night. And that's such a spiritual high. We don't want to come and become peasants, and there'll be such a spiritual fall. We want to stay in the desert. And that was their intention. It was a very lofty intention. And they were, of course, completely wrong. No, they were right. And when the Jews went into Israel, yes, of course they fell, and they did not maintain the spirituality they had when they're for 40 years eating the manna from heaven and the water from the rock and being sustained by the clouds. Of course they didn't maintain that spirituality, but they were living a human life in a human world. And that's what God wants. That as humans in a human world, interacting with all the physical stuff of this world, we serve God. And as we do so, we take the physicality and we give it to God. So your goal is not, it's not your goal, and it wouldn't be possible if it was your goal, but you know, that your children should stay in this bubble, removed from the world around them with all of its, you know, negativity. As Julie said, just a lot of negativity, and she's completely right. But our goal is to equip our children so when they go out into the world, they'll have the tools, just as their parents have the tools now, to have the discrimination, to have the discernment, to be able to take in what they should and reject what they should. You know, so that's really, as you're protecting your children now, because they're so young and formative and impressionable, as Danielle said, and she's completely right. And that's why you're homeschooling and you're doing all these things. At the same time, you want to give them tools. You want to really think how to give them tools to understand how to process the world around them, how to take the good and reject the other stuff, how to feel proud of who they are and what they are, so they don't, so they're not vulnerable. So it seems to me, that you all really are, I'm saying I'm not even going to go through everything I wrote here, because it seems to me you're there, you understand a lot. So my question would be areas you struggle with, areas that you're attacked by. So Danielle said what she still struggles with is social media, and is, I assume you mean something like Facebook, where she sees what her friends are doing and she doesn't want to stop being friends with them, but she doesn't really want to see those things. She doesn't want her kids to see those things. So that's an area Danielle's struggling with. Christelle said you're struggling with the neighborhood kids, and you can't tell your son not to play with anyone, but that seems to be the area of struggle now. Julie, Jenny, what are you struggling with? What areas do you feel you're still succumbing to or attacked by in this area?
I think mine is the social media, the news. Yeah, it's so
News is like the most dangerous thing out there.
yeah, that's why I think I better cut it off. Since I heard everyone is, cutting it off. So I think I have to start mine, because it's really poisoning our mind. It's hard to cut it off, but I will I will do my best to cut it off.
The
because I know
news
I
is
can.
designed to evoke fear. That is their purpose for a very simple reason, because then you're going to keep turning into the news to hear the latest updates. If they don't have a hook on you and you're not so interested, you're not going to listen so much. So they have to evoke that fear. So you're going to come back and come back and come back. And if they stop evoking the fear, you're going to stop coming back. So that's
Yeah.
why most of the news, most of the times, is fear evoking, is depressing, makes the
Yeah.
world look even worse than it is, because it's
Yeah,
just highlighting the
only,
bad. It's
yeah,
highlighting the
only that.
negative.
Yeah, only that. But my son, he's pretty positive. He doesn't wanna watch, you know, like news. He doesn't wanna heard anything about him, and he's doing online school, and he likes it. He doesn't wanna go back to regular school anymore. He said it's not really that good. It's better online.
Interesting.
Thank you.
So your son does not, so your son learns from home.
He's learning from the set because he's an actor, and he's doing it online. And he said he doesn't think that he will go back to regular school. He doesn't want to do it anymore. He said it's not that he did not really gain that much from school. Online is better. Yeah, because he has more time to play than, chatting with, friends and talk about negativities, news. And yeah, he knows that, school sometimes is poisoning your mind. So he's not into that. He's only focused on his career and, for everything that, will benefit him. That's it. He doesn't want any negativity because he's always thinking about, his talent. He wants to use his talent. He has his goal. That's it. He's more positive than me. That's it. Yeah, it's true. Sometimes he's teaching me, Mommy, stop watching news. Stop, looking on the internet, just be positive, and don't ever believe on the news. Most of them are fake.
Yes,
Just
there's
focus.
a lot of fake. So you're
Yeah.
saying you feel your area of struggle is also social media.
Oh yeah. It's huge. And I'm gonna stop it because you guys are starting. I should, I should stop.
You gotta keep up.
We're gonna keep up with you
Gotta
guys.
keep up. So you gotta struggle. Yes, you gotta say, okay, I'm stopping social media. So I guess I'm fortunate because I never started Facebook, or I don't have any of that stuff. I never did it. I never wanted to do it. The only thing I do is WhatsApp from that social media end. And to me, that's just it's a convenience. It works. You're not getting, as Danielle's saying, all this other stuff isn't coming at you. It's just a convenient way to communicate with people. But yes, I definitely feel, and like you said, it's a time waster for sure. And you're being shown images that you don't want. But like Danielle says, if these are what your friends are doing and this is what they're sharing, this is what they're posting, and even if you're like, ugh, I don't want that, it's already in your home. Just like we've spoken about putting holy books in your home. When you have holy books, godly books, it exudes a certain energy. It's a certain way. It's affecting the air of the home. That holiness is making the air a different air, a holier air. Having godly books, even if you don't learn them, changes the air of your home. And by the same token, having virtually images, well, they're not real, they're just on my computer. No, they're there. Having these virtual images in your home puts out this energy that really does affect the air of your home. It does. It really does. And we're very sensitive. Like Julie said, negativity in, negativity out. Sad, depressive, fearful thoughts in. And then we wonder about our moods. No, it very, very, very affects. I think no people have ever been as challenged by this concept as us, as this generation, as now, 2022. Meaning this has been a Jewish value always. It's embedded in our commandments, is this idea of guarding your eyes. It's in the Shema prayer. It's fundamental to Judaism, is guarding your eyes. But, in previous time, guarding your eyes was a lot more simple. And it wasn't in your living room. It wasn't on your phone. It wasn't invading your life to the way it does today. Why do we need to do this? Well, it's interesting because this is actually a commandment, and it is actually one of the commandments that we call perpetual constant commandments, meaning generally commandments are a certain time, a certain place, a certain situation. Like if there's a commandment to eat, like you're not supposed to eat the meat from an animal that was still alive when it was being cut up. Well, that applies very specifically to when you're eating meat. And if you're supposed to give charity, that applies very specifically to when you have money, and did you or did you not take a portion and give it to God. So those are very situational specific. And most commandments are. Even if the situation can be very long stretches for many days, it's still situational, it's still time oriented. But there are 6 commandments that are very foundational to the very fabric of our relationship with God. And we're told they are constants, always, like believing in God, not believing in idols, not believing in anything but God, believing in the absolute oneness of God. There's only one God, not 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 10. There's only one. That's foundational, and that's constant. And in that list of 6, do not stray after your hearts and after your eyes, that you stray after them. Guard your eyes, guard your thoughts. That is on the list. It's very interesting because all the other 5 are very God-oriented, like believe in God, not believe in anything but God, believe in the absolute unity of God. And then we have, and don't stray after your eyes. Don't stray after your hearts. Don't go in that direction because it's so easy and it just is so destructive. So there it is, up with the most basic tenets of Judaism, like loving God and fearing God and believing in the unity of God. And don't stray after your eyes. It's that important. It belongs in that company. Why? Well, what you see penetrates your brain, and it's there forever. Whatever you've ever seen or heard never leaves your subconscious. It's always a part of you. It's very hard to cleanse yourself from it. That doesn't mean it's impossible, because obviously everyone here, myself I'm sure included, has seen and heard things that we sure wish we hadn't, and definitely don't want in our brain. But you feel like, okay, well, it's there, I'm stuck, I'm forever tainted. No. We always believe that one can repent. We always believe that one can cleanse, but it's difficult. It's very difficult. So that's a significant reason why it's so important. Whatever you're going to see is going to penetrate your mind, and whatever you see is going to be there forever. It's really hard to get rid of. Also, it's viewed as defiling the finest thing you possess. Like if you would envision you're wearing a, whatever, a t-shirt, and you get it dirty, okay, whatever. You'll throw it in the wash, hopefully it will come out. If not, all right, so it'll be a stained t-shirt. But if you had this beautiful dress that you got to wear to a sibling's wedding, silk or satin or linen, and then you got a stain on it, oh my gosh, it's ruined. I can never get that out. And I can't wear it with a stain. It's a beautiful thing, meant to be beautiful, not meant to be, all right, a stained t-shirt, who cares? And that's what we view our mind as. So different transgressions, if you will, affect different parts of us. But what we see and what we hear is penetrating our mind. And that's the most refined thing God gave us from our entire body. It's the highest thing we possess is our mind. And therefore, harming it is viewed as that significant. Another thing to keep in mind to inspire yourself to get off social media or whatever, each one of us have our own challenges, is where your thoughts are, that's where you are. And very often, if something is wrong and it's more overt, meaning it's expressed outwardly, we're more conscious that we're doing it. And especially if we have people around, we will be embarrassed. So you're just embarrassed because we know it's appropriate. And I wouldn't use it, it's like Christelle mentioned words. Well, I would never say those words. I would be embarrassed to myself to say such a word. If nobody else is around, for myself, it's not me. So when something is out there, like a word or an action, even more so, it's very obvious, it's very concrete. And we're like, that's not me. I would never want to say that. I would never do that. That's dishonest. I would never do that. I would never say that. That's inappropriate. That's wrong. That's harmful. But in our brain, your brain can go anywhere. Not only your brain can go anywhere and nobody else knows what you're doing in your brain, but even you yourself, you sort of convince yourself it doesn't really count. It's just in my brain. Like, anything, we can understand any example. If something was not moral, for me to do something not moral, I'm a good person. I'm a godly person. For me to say something not moral, I'm a good person. I'm a godly person. For me to think something not moral, it doesn't really seem real. I'm not doing anything. I'm not even saying anything. It's just a fleeting thought. It's just a memory. It's just a fantasy. It's just something, an image that I saw 20 years ago, and suddenly my own inner pop-ups popped up into my brain. So like it's nothing. So we convince ourselves that our thoughts are not under our control and they're meaningless. Wrong and wrong. We have the responsibility and the ability to control our thoughts, and our thoughts are not meaningless at all. Our thoughts are very, very, very real. They're concrete realities. And we have to overcome that piece in our mind that excusing, allowing ourselves to do the wrong thing piece, which tells me, it's just a thought. It's not, I would never say that. I would never do that. Just thinking it. Thinking it could be a memory, thinking it could be a fantasy. I'm saying thinking it could be a pop-up, an inner pop-up, but it's reality. I can control my thoughts. I'm responsible to control my thoughts because my thoughts are real. You are where your thoughts are. So if your thoughts are in bad places, inappropriate places, non-godly places, angry places, tense places, fearful places, worried places, that's where you are. Your thoughts are expressing reality, your reality. Most people would think much worse than what they would say or do. And again, they allow themselves to do that because thoughts aren't real. Thoughts are real. It's really important to get that in our heads because our whole wiring is telling us, nah, it's nothing, it's just a thought. It's not real. It's nothing, it's a thought. Thoughts are real. Actions are real. You wouldn't do that. Speech is real. You wouldn't do that. Thoughts are real. Thoughts are real. And again, even in terms of words, sometimes people allow themselves to say things that they would never do. But they would say things because they don't think of it as real. There's a famous incident that happened in the synagogue of the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov was the founder of the Hasidic movement some 250 plus years ago. And in his synagogue, in his town, in Mezhebush, in the Ukraine, two simple people got into an argument. And one said to the other, I'm going to tear you up like a fish. It's not a common idiom of the 21st century in America. But I guess in those days that was, more their world. So I'm going to rip you up like a fish. And when the person said this, the Baal Shem Tov told all of his disciples to link like hand to shoulder, hand to shoulder, hand to shoulder, hand to shoulder. They made a circle. And then the two disciples closest to him put their hands on his two shoulders. And so they were now also connected to each other. It was like a connectivity, a circle of energy, and now they tapped into the source. They tapped into the holy Baal Shem Tov's energy, and they all started screaming because they saw how this person that said it was whipping up the other person, literally like you'd rip up a fish. They were screaming, and then the students took their hands off the Baal Shem Tov's shoulders. They couldn't handle it because that was really what's happening on a spiritual plane, on a non-physical plane, but it was really happening. Words are very impactful. You know, Christelle was talking about guarding her son from inappropriate language by like giving him the list of stuff that he does not want to hear. That's sort of a tricky one. Saying if any of these things are said, that's when you exit. It's even words that are not bad language, but just, I mean, there's so many expressions. I would never allow my children to say, never want them to say. I guess they would never say in front of me because they just know it would be in a, like totally, what did you just say? Because there's so many words that are just, no, words are real. If you say those words are real. And if you think these thoughts are real. And as we allow ourselves to be exposed, even as seems a consensus is either the world around, like Christelle is saying, or the social media, like Jenny and Danielle is saying, maybe some subtle issues in music, as Julie is saying, we're putting all that stuff into ourselves. This makes a real impact on us because these things are real. And how our brain processes them, that's a reality. It's not like just what I'm thinking. It's just what I'm saying. No, this is real and it's there forever. It says that we're told in terms of gossip that if you think bad about someone else, you're really affecting them. Sorry for the noisiness in the background. That if you would think negative about someone else, oh, they're so mean, oh, they're so deceitful, you're actually affecting them and making them meaner and more deceitful, because thoughts are real. Thoughts impact. Let me read that chat. Absolutely. So Julie's talking about her daughter and a friend who verbally tears her down. And absolutely, you need to protect yourself. And at that age, to protect yourself is exactly that, is at least temporarily stopping that relationship.
She's like, I just always feel gross. So she just peeked around the corner. Yeah. So because the thing is that when people talk sarcastically towards you or say things, they actually mean what they're saying. And I'm just joking. They're not joking. You're not joking. You don't say it. If you didn't mean it, if there's even a little bit of it that isn't true, you wouldn't say it. So you just have to. So she's like, I just don't think that I can be friends with her. And I said, well, then you just can't. I mean, you can't. And it's, unless you're willing to tell her, look, you can't talk to me like that anymore. And that's not an easy thing to do either.
I think you're so right, and you said it exactly. I know, working with teenagers, which is one of the things I do, they have this expression, JK, just kidding. And it's like, I whenever I hear it, I react, and I say, there's no such thing. It's like, that's your excuse. You can say the most hurtful thing in the world, and then just kidding. What does that mean? What does that mean? How can you be hurtful and then put a Band-Aid over it as if to make it clean and permissible because it was a joke? No, that was a hurtful, horrible, mean thing. And we don't do that.
No, there was my oldest son was a freshman. My middle son was in 6th grade, and Zoe was like 8 years old. And they were all in public school, And I mean, I was in public school too a lot. I was always helping out. That's the only way I put them in, is because I was there every day with them, just doing stuff, helping out teachers in the different rooms or whatever. But one day I just came home and I said, no more. We're not doing this anymore. In this house, we're going to speak uplifting words to each other. If you are not encouraging someone, then you need to keep your mouth shut. And then I went beyond that and I said, look, this is going to be new for me and this is going to be new for Dad. So if you hear us degrading or being mean or saying something that we shouldn't say to anybody, you have a right to call us out, because we all have to learn how to do this. And I think that was probably one of the best things we ever did, because the kids realized that we make mistakes too, and it was okay to call. We gave them permission to say, help us lift people up with our words, help us be kind and loving and with our words, and generous with our words. So it was a great thing. It really changed our house. And you could definitely tell when people come in that don't do that, because when they leave, it's like, ugh, it just feels gross.
Yes, yes, yes. It's a very conscious effort. And as you're saying, it's not natural. And that's why you said to your children, you can feel free to also, and you gave them permission to comment in a respectful way when parents are not there, because you didn't have that education. You know, you didn't have the tools either. You're all learning the tools at the same time of words are real, thoughts are real. And that's why it's so important. We're trying to understand, why is it so important to guard your eye? Why is this one of the most fundamental commandments? Before there was social media, why was it so important? Because anything you see gets straight into your mind and affects your thoughts, affects your words, tampers everything, tarnishes everything, and thoughts are real. So these are the 3 points. Thoughts are real. I can control my thoughts, and I am responsible for controlling my thoughts. Okay, those are the 3 points. That is the foundation of why it's so important to guard your eyes, your ears, everything you're exposed to. Everything you're exposed to goes right in. It's right there, playing with your mind. Thoughts are real. I can control my thoughts, and I'm responsible for controlling my thoughts. So do you generally, I mean, before tonight and before my talking, did you view your thoughts as real? Well, you just raise your hands if you always viewed your thoughts as real. Or you put thumbs up if you did and thumbs down if you didn't.
Hey, Searle, in like behavioral health and stuff, one thing that we learn and we teach is that, our thoughts are kind of like the scroll at the bottom of the news. It's kind of like news feed, and it's like we can allow our thoughts to be these passive things and not really pay attention to them. It's like, yes, they're there, but they're not in control, and they are not necessarily real. Is that kind of the same thing? It's like
no, we're saying thoughts are real. So it's
gotcha.
Thoughts are real, meaning well, I maybe I should explain my terminology, because maybe you're saying the same thing. We're just using the same words to mean something very different. Thoughts are real, meaning whatever we think exists. Just like whatever I do is reality, right? If I ripped a piece of paper, that's reality. There was a whole piece of paper, now I ripped it, and it's in shreds. I have the blank piece of paper and I wrote on it, and now there's writing on it, right? So my action is concrete, my action is real, my action makes a real world change. Well, so too my words. Well, no, because you could just say words. Words could be meaningless. You could say to someone, I love you, and not mean it at all. You could say to someone very horrible, negative words I wouldn't want to say, and it's totally meaningless and nothing happens. Nothing happened. No, that's not true. That's what I brought in the story with the Baal Shem Tov, the protagonist ripping the other one like a fish. When you say something, it's real. There is a reality. It might not be a physical reality that we see, that our eyes see, but on some dimension, there is something happening between those two people. And our thoughts are real as well. like I was just giving the example, that if you think, oh, that person is so mean, oh, that person is so self-centered, oh, that person is so dishonest, we are told from a spiritual perspective, you are strengthening their negativity and making them more mean and more dishonest and more self-centered by your thoughts. Thoughts are real. Now, maybe this is what you mean by the words running on the bottom of the screen. There's a concept of the subconscious, and the subconscious sends us thoughts all the time. We are
Right.
told.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that that's probably it. Yeah, like just for like some people that have anxiety, for instance. So they may have all these anxious thoughts that are like, you know, rolling in the bottom of their screen, so to speak, but it's not that they have to necessarily like focus on them. You know, they can thought block. They
So
can
what exactly? So what we're told is that when the subconscious sends up a negative thought,
okay.
you're not responsible for that because you can't control that. A regular person can't stop, you know, the feed from the subconscious. We can't
Okay.
block that feed, but you can control if you think about it or not. So let's say it came to your mind, some vision from a song you heard 20 years ago when you used to listen, or you walked into a store and you heard a song and that reminded you, you know, you walked out quickly, but that just reminded you of the whole song because you knew that song. When it actually reminded you of the whole scene you were in when you heard that song. Or just some TV show from 5 years ago, from 20 years ago, popped into your brain, the whole thing, like as if you just watched it like within the last 5 minutes, or some book you read, or some movie you saw. It's just all there because your subconscious never loses anything. It's fresh. Your minds are brilliant. How does this not work when you're in school and taking a test? Well, you don't have the right hooks to pull it out. But everything a student ever learns is also all there in their mind, the same way every movie and magazine and video, that's all there. It's just some things come up more naturally than others, but it's all in our minds. So suddenly this whole totally inappropriate scene from this movie you watched before you knew to guard your eyes pops into your brain. You're not responsible till you start thinking about it. How do you not think about it? Switch the channels. Change the channels, which means consciously think about something else. And ideally, if it's something negative, consciously think about something godly. Don't think, I don't want to think about it, because that's sort of inviting it in. I don't want to think about it. Like, you're like, as you're pushing it away, you're inviting it in. Just literally push it away with 2 hands by blocking that thought with something else. Put something else in your brain, something strong, something godly, and just keep thinking that godly thought until the other thing just retreats back into the subconscious. So conscious thought is real. When the subconscious said something, we're not responsible till we start thinking about it. And once we start thinking about it, yes, there's a reality. What is that reality? It's just like another, like an alternative reality that's happening at the same time. So if a person is consciously thinking, just like we fantasize, now fantasy can be very innocuous. Oh, how much good I would do if I would win the lottery, whatever. So, you're just thinking about all these people you would like to help if you had a lot of money. Well, that's a fantasy. Now, there's nothing wrong with that fantasy. You're not doing anything wrong there. But on a certain level of reality, that fantasy is sort of playing out. But now let's imagine you're not thinking such a beautiful, pure fantasy. I mean, these children, these horrible things we see of like children coming in with guns in the schools and the horrors that have happened. We can understand that those children, before they did that act, they for sure played it out in their brain countless times. Oh, if I'm going to get back at so-and-so, and I'm going to get back at so-and-so, and I'm going to get back at everyone, and what I would do if I had power, and if I had a gun in my hand, and all that violence and anger and rage and hurt just growing through their brains, it's creating reality. And then sometimes we see it play out on the physical plane. But every time they're thinking it's playing out. So it could be when they're telling you ignore this, the scrolling words, they could mean subconscious. And what they could mean is, what I'm saying would be, if you want to ignore the subconscious, which yes, we're supposed to do if it's inappropriate, like here, anxious thoughts, consciously think something else. If you don't consciously think something else, that will take on a life of its own. It will take over your brain, and then it will create a reality. So some of you did view your thoughts as real, not everyone, but some of you did. If you viewed your thoughts as real, if you really got that your thoughts were real, how would it change you? Or if now you view a little more how real your thoughts are, how do you think this will help you change? To me, the more I would get it and remember it and not let myself forget how real my thoughts are, the more I would be conscious of guarding my thoughts and guarding my eyes, because from the eyes come the thoughts, right? That's what the verse says. Do not stray after your eyes and your hearts that you stray after them. It starts with the eyes, which of course the eyes could be the eyes, the ears, all the ways we take in information, the world around us. Like many people mentioned social media. If we understand that my thoughts are real, then I'm going to even more guard my eyes from allowing that exposure, because it's going to create very real thoughts, maybe today or maybe in 20 years from now. Once it's in my subconscious, it's there forever. Very hard to get out of that. Very hard to remove that. So the more real you understand your thoughts are, the more you're focused on guarding yourself from absorbing any negativity that will, one way or another, play itself out in your mind or on your lips or in your actions or in all three arenas. So the first message is thoughts are real. The second message is I can control my thoughts. There's a Hasidic story of somebody that went to a great sage, great tzaddik, and he said to him, how are you supposed to control your thoughts? Like, I know it's obviously it's written, you have to control unwanted thoughts, but how in the world do you do that? So this great sage, his name is Magid of Mezer, so that's a very good question. I'm going to send you to my student so-and-so in such a village. He'll be able to answer. Okay. So the student continued his journey. This man journeyed to that village. He came to the house that the great sage had told him, and he knocks on the door. And the door doesn't open. He's like, that's weird. They didn't hear me knocking. He knocks louder. He knocks louder. He knocks louder. They're ignoring, and he hears inside. You know, he hears it's a house. There's things are happening. People talking. This, that. Nobody comes to the door. Now it's getting later. I mean, he's exhausted. He traveled first to the stage. Now he traveled here. It's getting cold. This is Ukraine. It's winter. He's pounding away, pounding away, pounding away. He's in this little village. Has nowhere to go. That's it. Nothing. He literally falls asleep on the doorstep, so like upset and confused. And what is going on? It's crazy. In the morning, the owner of the house opens. He sees the man. He's so nice. Come in, and this. And he's acting like he totally didn't hear a thing the night before. And he's just so nice to him. And he's really being so nice. And the guy's like, this, I don't know. I'm really confused. And he says, I don't understand. Last night, you didn't hear me? I said, I've heard you. I said, so why do you open the door? He said, I'm the master of the house. I choose who I let in or not. So he understood that the sage that had sent him wanted to have, and obviously somehow, and these people are holy enough that there was a communication going on prior to texts and emails and other ways of communication, that he wanted to really experience this in his bones, a very experiential lesson. You're the master of the house. You choose who comes in or not. And that's how we have to view our minds. We are the master of this house. We control. And if there's an unwanted thought, an unwanted image, an unwanted memory, you just shut the door with both hands very strongly by replacing it with something else, and ideally with something godly. And just that's your protection system. You just hug very strongly that godly thought until the other thing completely dissipates. And for sure, what you don't do is like allow yourself to think it. Like it's not bad, but just allow yourself to think that memory. Allow yourself to remember that. I'm saying movie, TV, novel, whatever, just from a different world that you don't really want to be your world. If you don't want it to be your world, don't let it be your world in your thoughts. If it's in your thoughts, it's your world. And how do I prevent myself from getting to that point? Guard your eyes. So we don't need to be guarding the doors of our mind so much. We can guard our eyes. We have less trying to infiltrate our mind. The more that our eyes let in, once that defense system was down, then the more our mind has to contend with. And again, so thoughts are real. I can control my thoughts, and I'm responsible for controlling my thoughts. We have to switch the channels. We have to switch. But sometimes it's a very hard thought because we've thought this like 20,000 times, like some pity party that you so quickly get into, or it's all because of my mother, or what happened to me when I was 5, or thoughts you've thought and thought and thought and thought and thought. So they are very strong roads in your mind. So you have to keep slamming the door, keep switching the channels, keep switching the channels, keep switching the channels. And if it doesn't help, pray to God to help you escape this thought. I've had thoughts that sometimes I just have to pray to just take this out of my mind. I don't want to think it. I'm just not succeeding. I'm battling. I'm not winning the battle. Just God, please take it away from me. And he does. Obviously, when we are exposed to things, Julie spoke about the negativity that comes in. I think something else that's very endemic to our generation is the desensitization. You know, as we see so many images and hear so many stories, people just stop caring as much. Less shocks us. We become more callous. You imagine everyone whipping out their smartphone to take something to send to CNN, and then we get, you know, the latest images of when this tragedy happened. You know, we real time, you know, we're there because everyone that's there is right away taking footage of it. So you think of a child, normal child growing up in America nowadays, how much they've seen from a very young age. It's just, and they can't discriminate at that age. They're just viewing it all. It's all real. And it's just so much impacting their minds that they just sort of shut down. They shut down those really human parts of being sensitive to tragedy, to feelings, to experiences, because otherwise it's just like overload, because they're just seeing so much. So the more you allow yourself to see, the more it sort of desensitizes you and makes you, in the end, like a less caring person, a less sensitive person, a less empathetic person, because you've just seen too much. Does anyone have a memory of when they experienced something and felt like, oh, I became desensitized, like this doesn't bother me anymore? Desensitization could also be like with inappropriate anything. As Christelle was talking about language, inappropriate many things in this world. And like the first time it's like, oh, that's shocking. And by the 3rd or the 4th or the 6th or the 10th, depending who you are, you just don't notice, which is very sad, because that has sort of made it acceptable because you just became so desensitized to it. Does anyone have any time where they experienced that, where they noticed themselves being desensitized? Like they had lost something because they just had too much exposure?
I think cussing in high school, I became desensitized to it. I was not a cusser because my mom was a cusser and I hated it. So I just didn't do it. So when I was out of high school was really bad. But when I was out of high school and went to college, then there was, I didn't have it at college near like I had it, which is strange, but I didn't. Maybe it's because of the people I hung out with or whatever. I didn't care for it. But then when I had kids, we just didn't do that at all. So then when I happened to turn a movie on one day and like every other word was the F bomb, I was like, it shocked me. But I had been so desensitized to it then, once I finally got away from it, then it shocked me again. Where before it didn't shock me.
I think curse words is definitely like a very clear arena where we see that. I can remember for
Yes.
myself,
And it's
once
so
being around
common.
someone who was just using a lot of inappropriate language,
I just don't.
and I saw the point where it stopped shocking me, and that was a bad. And I felt bad, like I sort of like, well, I mean, I'm around this person, so like I'm hearing it, so it's hard. But I would never say it. I would never let myself think it. Obviously, I would never think such a word. But just when you hear it again and again and again, at a certain point, you stop having that shock, and that's a problem. It's good to be shocked. It's good to be horrified. It's good to be like, what? Because that means you know it's not you. You know it's wrong. And when you hear it and it's meaningless, that's a big problem. Yeah, I agree with you. I think curse words is a very, very clear way to see when the impact begins, let alone if you start in your own mind thinking it, let alone if it would actually slip out of your lips. But even when it no longer hurts you the same way, that's already like a certain level of like, uh-oh, been way too many times. Anyone else? Anyone else can think of a memory of a time when they felt like they were desensitized to something just by the exposure?
I can think of a lot.
Yeah.
And it started in grade school when in the gym classes, the morality was taken away because we had no choice but to get dressed and undressed in front of other girls because they said it was all right. I hated it. I felt terrible, violated, having to get dressed and change my gym clothes in front of other girls and take a shower. So I would try and be the very last one in the shower and get dressed. I would try and stay covered as long as I could, but soon that goes away because it's taken away. And then it goes from there. The immodest dress just goes downhill and downhill and downhill. And it's sad what they've done to our society. They've taken the immodesty away. They've taken it not so bad to hear the cuss words, and not necessarily that they're terrible cuss words, but they still are words that shouldn't be said around children or women. And I used to, when I was rodeoing and stuff, I could talk with the best of them because that's what you get wrapped up in. And marrying my wonderful husband, that had to change. But the thing of it is now, I am back to being sensitized because I get so offended when a man would say something in front of me that is offensive, that should not be said in front of a woman. And in fact, and Jack was very adamant about that, but we have an old friend that was a team roping buddy of Jack's. And he lost his wife about 2 years ago. And he calls every now and then. And I have to tell him every time, do not talk like that. It's not appropriate. I don't want to hear it. And it's he can't get it through his head. And when we met for lunch, he says, I'm going to give you the biggest hug ever. I said, no, you're not. You're not touching me. I said, Jack might be buried, but I'm still Jack's. I'm still his wife. No man is touching me. And he says, you're crazy. You're crazy. I said, I might be crazy, but nobody's touching me. And now people have been around me long enough. There's one, my IT man used to be terrible with the F word. And now when he says it, he came out and shot with us the other day. And he goes, oh, I'm sorry. I slipped. And so, people will back off if you get in their face about it and say it's not appropriate. I'm not putting up with it. So that's my story.
That's great. I think Dixie and Julie both brought out in different ways the same point. They both expressed how they have become desensitized as innocent victims of society and how they regain sensitivity. As Julie said, that then when she saw it or heard it, it was like, what? And Dixie's saying how she totally regained it, totally changed it to the degree that it horrifies her, and she doesn't let anyone else get around and away with it, which is great. Absolutely, have to take all your strength and use it that way. But it's, you know, what Dixie said, it's so true. We take these small children and we give them messages that are violating their natural sense of modesty, and children have a natural sense of modesty.
It's
You would hope.
it's not like that so much anymore. I'm in the school district, so I substitute teach, and I'm at one school all the time. And the school that I'm in has probably 5 to 7 transgender kids. And some of them I didn't even know they were until another teacher said, that's so and so's twin sister. And I'm like, twin sister, remember? Because she had told me you had a twin brother. But I had no idea that she was a boy, because she looks like a girl, but she's a he. And the other day, which really is hard for me, but the other day I walked into the bathroom, and he was in there going to the bathroom because he identifies as a girl, and he's 11 in the girls' bathroom because it's okay. So what is happening right now is way worse than what you could ever imagine. I mean, with me being in the public schools, I thought I would just let you know it is beyond anything. It is the most evil. It's disgusting, and I was shocked. But then at the same time, I'm like, but everybody's treating him like a girl, calling him a girl's name. He has long hair. He dresses like a girl. I mean, and I did not even realize it looking. I had no clue that she was a he. No clue until someone told me. And there's more of them. And I'm finally said, don't tell me who they are. I just don't even want to know, because it's so difficult for me now to see this guy, this kid. And then the mom and dads are okay with it. And there's ones that they're doing hormonal treatments. This kid's getting hormonal treatments already, 11 years old. This is the kind of world that we're in right now. It's horrible. It's horrible. And so you're talking about being desensitized. These kids that are around them are okay with this. It's okay.
Because they've been brought up with it.
Right. It's really bad. It's really bad.
So what you're saying, so what Dixie said, I still think what Dixie said was a really great example, unfortunately, of children getting desensitized, and of a child with a natural sense of modesty having it stripped away from her, and, you know, brutally, because this is a school and this is fine, and, you know, and then you eventually comply because you get desensitized enough, so you stop having a natural modesty about your body. And what you're saying, Julie, is just, and how as time continues, if it doesn't go in a good direction, like you arrive where you're heading, you know, where the world heads, that's where it gets to. So, and then you're saying, so the children around this child, I mean, I feel so bad for this child, but the children around, which is what you're saying, the desensitization process is because they're being given this message, it's fine and it's good and we respect everyone and it's fine and it's good and we tolerate everyone, and that means we're a good person and we're non-judgmental and we're liberal and we're open-minded. So they're being fed these messages, which is so sad. So sad. As you're saying, even more sad than what Dixie said, because I feel so bad for this little 11-year-old boy being given hormones too. And what happens when he's 25 and changes his mind. And
I
then,
know, that's why I said, don't tell me who the other ones are. I don't want to know.
oh,
Because
right.
it hurts every time I see him, my heart just aches. It just
Can you
aches.
not tell with the other ones?
Oh
Can you
no,
not
I didn't even know this one was. I had no clue.
really?
There was nothing to let me
Wow.
know that it was not a girl. I had no clue whatsoever. That was what I think was even harder for me to realize, is that I can't even tell who's who. I can't even tell if they're boys or girls. I mean, like, if they're, yeah.
When you're talking about on that level, it's my son who's special needs, and therefore in the public school system. And one of the things they try, to teach a child with special needs is what's a boy or a girl. And I'm like, in the public school system, these are very murky lines. Forget about transgender. What do you say? Long hair, short hair? No, that's not true. Skirts, pants? No, that's not true. What is definitive? In my world, it's very clear. The boy's wearing pants, the girl's wearing skirts or dresses, the boy's wearing a kippah and the tzitzit, the girls are not. It's very clear to differentiate who's a boy and who's a girl. But in the public school environment where they're trying to teach him this, there are no lines. How in the world is a child supposed to know? He's just supposed to pick it up.
And it just adds to the confusion.
It adds to a
You
lot of
know?
confusion.
I mean, like,
These
I
lines are
had
so
one,
not clear.
yeah, I had a girl, and she is a girl, that came up to me and said, my pronouns are they and them. And I said, how can you be plural? That's what I just said to her. I'm sorry, but you're not plural. So I'm not going to call you they, them. If you don't like it, that's too bad. If your parents want to yell at me, that's fine too. I don't care. But you can't be plural. I am not a they and I am not a them. But she's only a they or them when she starts her period, because she doesn't like it. So then she wants to be a boy.
Oh my God.
Yeah. That's the
Okay, all right. So we have a lot of prayers to say for the world. So we're going to stop at this point. We are about halfway through what we wanted to get through on this topic. So as I said, it sounded from the beginning like people are already really focused, and hopefully some of the ideas of tonight are going to help you more. And we're going to continue next week. And I guess what we're hearing is just like, what we should recognize is every one of us, every human has enormous power, and godliness is much more powerful than evil. So every time we make a right choice, we're not just helping God, we're not just helping ourselves. The energy literally spreads out to the world. So if it's a world of such confusion, of such sadness, of such messages that these innocent children are absorbing, and they're all just victims. They're not bad, they're victims. So every time you make that positive choice and that right choice, you're not just personally helping your own eyes and heart and mind. You're sending a message of energy, of clear values, of clear morality to the world.
And that's why I keep subbing. Because someone has to do that for them. Someone has to be there.
Yes, and to give messages of clear morality,
But does that not make it acceptable? I'm just asking, don't get me wrong, I'm not condemning. But when that's how divorce became acceptable, and that's how all these things came into society to be acceptable. So if we don't say this is wrong and you're destroying our kids, it's a very hard thing, but how do you make it acceptable? And not say, I understand that you have an issue, but you're wrong. You're in a situation where your life is being destroyed.
I can't unless I want to lose my job.
Well, that's true. That's another thing that Satan works on us, that he hangs it over their head. People don't want to get the shot. But guess what? My grandson's in the Marines. He had to have the shot or they kick him out. So what do you do?
What you do is each one of us, because we're all face moral challenges, we all are face conflicts. The world does come right, not just to our doorstep, but right inside. And each one of us has to really understand that our choices do create reality, and our choices can create good reality. And the same way there's the negative and there's the pain, and there's so much going on in our world, there's also a lot of good in our world. And that good comes from people making a godly choice, which puts more good energy in the world, which allows other people to make good choices, which puts more good in the world, which allows other people to make good choices. You know, it's the ripple effect. The ripple effect works in both directions. You could say, but there's so few of us. But godliness is much more powerful than evil. So just by Julie saying to this girl, no, you are not a plural pronoun.
Good, yeah.
She's saying, no, I don't accept this garbage. Sorry, I'm not liberal. And I could claim as a teacher, I would be teaching people singular and plural pronouns. I mean, how can I do that? You know, there was some very disturbing video that was going around a few years ago. My son showed it to me. I couldn't watch the whole thing. It was so disturbing. But it was about a teacher who, like, I don't remember, you know, the child made a mathematical mistake, and the teacher pointed out that it was wrong, and somehow this created a whole revolution. And within a week, you know, there were like all these protests at the school, and the teacher gets fired. It was fantasy, but it was too eerily real. And it was incredibly, I'm sensitive to these things. I never watch anything. So therefore, if you don't watch, you're sensitive. So I was so disturbed by it. I couldn't watch it. It was like so disturbing. But that's what each one of us has to do. Each one of us has to stand up for truth. And stand up for truth. And know that when we stick with truth, which is sticking with God, He protects. You know, people can feel, but I'm going to get hurt. We have to say, even if in the process it seemed like the twist at the end of this story was whatever. So the teacher did something clever at the end, but I don't know if any of you saw this little video. It's not really relevant, but we stick with truth, and God protects. And we have to know that what we do impacts the world. There's a world out there, and that world is craving truth. That world is craving morality. That world is craving God. But they don't know that that's what they're craving, but they're craving it. And as each time as we make a choice, a good choice, a moral choice, a God choice, we're allowing so many other people to have a ladder, to have a hook, to also make that right choice. We're all very powerful, few, but so powerful that we can turn over the world, and we are. And that's why we're moving towards the redemption. The redemption's happening because choice after choice after choice, we're changing this world. We're making it God's home. That's the redemption. When God will be completely revealed on planet Earth, this will be His permanent home. This will be an absolute expression of God, and the whole world will have only one desire, which has always been the desire of man, to connect to God. And that will be the entire overt reality. And we're fortunate that we're in the trenches, making it happen. And then might seem like sometimes we contend it with a lot of hard stuff, but we just have to keep our eyes fixed on God's truth. God's truth. That's the moral barometer, God's truth. Because in the human man-made morality, what's true today is false tomorrow, you know? And what was false today might be true tomorrow. We stick with God's truth, with God's truth. And every time we take another step, an act in our mind, an act in our eyes, an act in our mouth, an act in our actions toward God's truth, it ripples into the world. And that's how we're creating redemption. And we are creating it every single day. Lubavitch Rebbe said time and time and time again, it's happening, and it's now. We're at the end of a long road. It's been 5,782 years that man's been marching toward redemption. And we're creating the reality. We're creating it by every single good deed we do. We're changing the fabric of this world. We are making this world receptive to the energy of God, to the energy of redemption. And this is the time. Bob Travis said again and again and again, this is it. We're the generation. We're making it happen. We're doing it. So yes, we all are faced with critical moral choices all the time. And when we make that right choice, it's not just for us. It's sending an energy to the world, and it's moving the world a step closer to redemption. And as Noahides, you're especially significant in this process because you're the world. And this is the world accepting God, the world proclaiming God's reality. And that's what the redemption is all about. We say 3 times a day, the conclusion of our prayers is the Elena Prayer, which is an Elena prayer, basically which we proclaim that there's only God and nothing but God. And then the next paragraph is a prayer that we describe the redemption. And how we describe the redemption? As a time when the entire world recognizes God. We don't talk about the candies on the trees. We don't talk about the return of the great sages. We don't talk about the resurrection of the dead. We don't talk that we're all in Israel. We talk that the entire world is serving God as one. That's what the Noahides can do right now. And that's why you're so pivotal in bringing redemption. And that's why I believe the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, as he intensified his campaign to bring the redemption, he intensified his campaign to reach the world with messages of the Noahide. They go hand in hand, redemption and Noahides, redemption and Noahides, redemption and Noahides, because Noahides are so critical. And as we're seeing here, there's moral decisions, moral choices we're making all the time. We change ourselves, we change the world, and we bring redemption. Should be a wonderful week. Thank you for joining. Thank you for your input. Hope it will inspire me to become better and see what I got to screen out also. We all should walk away saying, how am I going to do it even better? Ooh, I'm being really good, but I was here tonight. I got to improve. We should all find ways to improve and to be continued next week. Thank you so much for joining. Hopefully next week we'll hear how people may change it because of the class, because of the discussion, because of everyone's beautiful, beautiful input. Thank you so much for joining. Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Shavua Tov.